My writing process is slightly shocking to some because I can only really do it if I'm absolutely concentrated on it and nothing else. And I've also discovered that there's no hiding or changing the spots with which one's born as a writer in terms of time. You're either a lark or an owl, it seems. And I am, however much I try and fight it, I am a lark. I'm an early riser. And usually when I'm writing, certainly in the case with Heroes, I get up at about 4 a.m. and I write to about midday. And sometimes I just don't even get out of my chair. I know this because you've got these watches now that tell you when you've stood up, and you can see hours without standing up once, possibly to go for a pee or occasionally to make a coffee. That's it. And I just concentrate and concentrate. And such is the nature of technology, of course, is that you can have now all the sources. Greek myths depend on various sources, some of them the oldest ones, Hesiod and Homer, and then these other names that we don't bore you with, but some of them rather funny, like the pseudo Apollodorus and Apollonius Rhodius and so on. They obviously weren't contemporary to the Greek myths, but they were the oldest sources, and they're what we rely on for various versions. And there are lots of different versions, of course, in the same way that the versions of the life of Christ, say, are different according to the 4 different Gospels. So I have my equivalent of the 4 Gospels, which is 4 of the biggest sources of Greek myth, and I look at those, plus there are dictionaries of classical mythology and other such things, and a great resource online called Theoi, which is the Greek for the gods, theoi.com, which is full of information and transcripts of the original sources translated into English, as well as versions of the playwrights like Euripides and so on, who told many of the mythic stories. So I have all those, and they're all available in different sort of windows on the computer, and then I have my writing one in the middle. For those who really love these sort of details of process, and a lot of people do. It's one of the funny things about being a writer. People at literary festivals always want to know what time you get up, whether you write out in rough or with a pencil first, and what word process you use. And as I can say, I use one called, very appropriately, Ulysses, who was, of course, a Greek character, Odysseus, also known as Ulysses. And that's the writing software I use. And essentially, and I suppose I would say this to anybody who would ever tried to write, you just have to throw words at it until you've got. In the same way, let's suppose you were to do a sculpture. You wouldn't take a tiny bit of clay to make a toe, and then make another one and put next to it, and then another one. You get a huge mass, and you'd slowly push it into the shape of a human being, and then when you got to the toe, you'd do more and more detail. And it's the same with writing, for me at least, is that you have to have the whole mass of writing. You write down as much as you can, and then you go in and sort of try and make it in a proper shape and so on. I love the process. It is exhausting because it's weeks and weeks and weeks with. Really, it's very hard for my husband. He gets used to it by now. He knows how I work and sort of tiptoes around during those periods. But it does mean by midday I'm free. I've done 8 hours roughly, and by then the brain is just going spinning round, and you have to calm down, have a bit of lunch, do some emails, think a bit, maybe read a tiny bit at night of what you've done that day, and then go to bed at about 9. It's a very strange way of living, but when it's over, it's fantastic. You're finally free. That's my process.